All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to anyone joining us from the Western time zones. Thank you for joining us for another one of our AM&P webinar series. I'm Thomas Marcetti, Associate Editor of Signature Magazine and of Callow Media. As Sony publishers right now, both for-profit and nonprofit, are looking at their content strategies, trying to find the best or just a better way forward. It seems like a particularly useful time to talk about creating content hubs that people might actually want to use. So as we get into the discussion today, we will be holding off on questions until the end. We have some time allotted specifically for Q&As because we do want to hear you and our presenters do want to be able to provide the feedback. So as we are going along, please feel free to drop questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring those, and when we get to the Q&A, I'll start from the top and work our way down. So with that, I will turn it over to the people you actually came here today to listen to. Teresa and Charlie, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Thomas. So as I am Teresa Witham, and my title is Managing Editor and Publisher for CUES and Credit Union Management Magazine. I have been with CUES, this is my 21st year, and I oversee pretty much all of our content from print to digital and everything that sort of lives on our content hub. And my partner here with this project was Charlie, so I will let him introduce himself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Charlie Militello. I am an Associate Creative Director at an agency called Chappell Roberts. We're located in Tampa, Florida, specifically in Ybor City, which is known for the chickens that wander everywhere, if you're wondering why there's a giant chicken behind me. Chappell Roberts is a full-service branding agency. We've been around for about 41 years, and we build brands. I've been there for 12 of those years. I specialize on the digital side of things, online user experience, and partnered with Teresa and her team to build their content hub, CU Management. So thank you all for joining our webinar today.
So we're going to sort of talk about this from a high level user experience and not really get too much into the technical details of how we built our site, but as we go through, you'll want to know just a little bit more about CUES. So we are the Credit Union Executive Society. We are based in Madison, Wisconsin, but we have employees who work from their homes around the country, including me. I'm just located up here in Baltimore. We have about 47 employees total, 26,700 members, and those come from just over 1,000 different organizations, including credit unions and other types of organizations. Our purpose and our mission is talent development for the C-suite of credit unions, the volunteer board of directors, and the future leaders. We sort of revamped our membership strategy a couple of years ago to try and dig deeper into the credit union, into the more middle management and people who want to sort of make a career out of credit unions. And then CU Management Magazine is our monthly print membership magazine. It is focused on in-depth information for credit union leaders. We have currently about 5,200 print subscribers, 22,000 digital subscribers, and then on our site, cumanagement.com, we have about 13,000 users per month. This is the question that started our journey towards a content hub. How would you deliver your association content if print went away? So our senior leadership directed me and a team of other editors, designers, sales, and web to consider this. So we convened a team, like I said. We spent about a year examining how this could work, how we might deliver high-level membership-worthy content in a world without print. At the time, this was back in 2017, we had a digital flipbook that came with our print contract, right? So it's the replica version. We had an app that was specifically created to deliver content. It wasn't a native magazine app. It didn't look like the magazine, but it was just for delivering content. We, of course, used email to drive people to our association website to look at content there. But despite having all of those different methods of delivering our content, none of them were creating an experience that came sort of close to replacing what that print experience gives members. And so we knew we needed something different. And, we considered enhancing each one of those, whether we would, sort of make enhancements to our flipbook or create or improve a better app. And then the other option was, sort of leaning into the website. So we did some research and we ended up deciding that an association hub made sense for us. And this is, sort of how we came to this conclusion was, well, first of all, you need the content, and we had the content. We had content, including podcast videos, webinar playbacks, white papers, members only online articles, open online articles, but they lived on our association Qs.org site in at least 4 different places. They were very, some of the things were very hard to find. Podcasts were sort of buried. People didn't know we did videos. And then we also had sort of some conflicting and confusion in our goals with wanting to sell more ads on our site, but also not wanting to take members away from our own sales funnel. And so looking at the content strategy, we sort of paired it to our overall association strategies. And one of those key strategies was to move away from being so heavily reliant on in-person event revenue. So we had a number of different ways we were looking at doing that, but one of them involved increased advertising and as well as sort of increasing our membership base. So the Content Hub idea seemed like a way that could accomplish both of those goals. So this is something you're thinking about. I would first, I'd suggest doing an inventory of what content you currently have. So for us, it was articles, podcasts, blogs, members only videos, white papers, newsletters, we could fill in the blank, whatever else you're currently creating, and then think about what you could add without, too much extra effort. So for us, we wanted to do more videos, including sponsored videos. We wanted to do more sort of enhanced white papers, almost, sort of like a really small ebook, more sort of research-based pieces. We're not adding print books, but that's something you might consider if that's, if you do books, consider how that might work in your content strategy online. Infographics is something you might consider. And now, a couple of years in, we're looking at how we could sort of enhance our video presence even more with sort of micro videos by taking content we already have from a webinar or from a podcast and repurposing that into a really short sort of 30-second video. And so then when you have your sort of list of all the content you're doing, it helps to sort of plot it out on a calendar to sort of see what a publishing schedule might look like. So we use a project management program called Workfront, and this is a view of our content for October, with each color representing a different kind of content. Green, for example, is an online daily article, what we call sort of a basic article that goes up online only. As you can see, we have plenty of content to publish at least one thing per day. Some days have multiple items going up. So, sort of looking back to where we were, we knew we had enough content to sort of make a content hub worthwhile, or, that we're not in danger of not having enough to publish on a regular basis. And of course, how often you publish is going to depend on your goals, your membership, what they're looking to you for, etc. So before I get into the how we did it, I want to just give you a quick overview of the outcome of us creating a content hub. across some key metrics that we set at the beginning, we have increased. So these are our average users, sessions, and page views per month combined from our Qs.org and cumanagement.com site. And so from 2018, which is when we launched our Content Hub, to today, we've grown in each area. And then as well, another key goal we were looking at was increasing the numbers of pages people were viewing per session, and that has also increased from 2018 to now. And then finally, a major goal for us was we wanted to increase our digital ad revenue, of course, as part of our goal to increase revenue that was not related to in-person events. And in 2019, we were doing really well at this. We had increased over 2018 a little bit, and then significantly compared to 2017. I wish I could have really awesome numbers to show you for 2020, but we all know what happened in March, and advertising pretty much came to a complete stop for a little while there, with everybody being worried about the future and sort of pausing on their ads. So at that time, we were working with our ad sales manager. She and I were having some really good success with proposing and selling print and digital ad bundles, either around a topic or around a month. So we had sort of like a spring special or a summer special. So I'm hoping in 2021 that we will see that becoming popular again, but so maybe next year I'll have some awesome numbers, but right now 2020 ads sadly have sort of fallen off. All right, so to the 10 points. Number one, when deciding to design or build a content hub or any website, you really, of course, need to know what your members want. So when we were doing our research in 2017, we looked externally at sort of the industry and learned that according to this Aquata magazine consumer study, that a great proportion of US adults were actively reading digital magazines. So that gave us hope. And what they were looking for in a digital publication included readable, vertically scrollable text, links to websites, copy and paste capability, an archive of back issues, embedded video content, and special articles. So this, again, sort of helped us point to the direction of an online content hub, a website that could sort of deliver all of these options. And then in addition to looking externally, we looked at what our members were telling us, including in our annual ReadX Reader survey, looking at our Google Analytics, looking at our member demographics and our target demographics for looking, trying to get deeper into the credit union with younger future leaders. And there we learned that our members had a strong interest in video and podcast content. However, they had low awareness that we currently offered those. And they were interested in topic-based content, especially around leadership, board governance, and growth. So all of that, again, sort of led us to deciding we wanted to create a site just for CU management that would be, of course, connected to, but separate from our Qs.org association site. But then we needed to find the partner to build that with us. So finding the right partner is really key to any kind of major endeavor. And so, of course, you start with the RFP process. I would recommend not starting from scratch. Happy to share the one we used if you want to send me an email after this. But in that RFP, you want to be detailed. You want to include everything from your wish list. We just threw everything in that in terms of our wish list, things that we figured would never be able to. So I remember one of them was being able to go from InDesign file to online, sort of like magic, right? That doesn't work, but it's still a wish list item, just in case. You want to include, of course, your timeline and be very realistic about that. Any sort of key performance indicators that you're going to measure your success against, so that your partner can help you achieve those. And then in terms of the timing, you really going through a couple of RFP processes now. It's like you can never have enough time. You will definitely need a question and answer period prior to the deadline for the partners or potential partners to make sure they understand what you're looking for and they can get you an adequate RFP. Again, enough time, about 2 to 3 months from start to finish is what we, I think how it ended up, but it did feel a little rushed at times, just everybody's busy with other things or there's vacations and you have to work around that. So just sort of pad the time if you can. And then this one is important to look beyond the usual suspects. If you can look outside of the association industry, there are, or, look beyond people you've used before. We sent our RFP to maybe like 6 different companies, but in the end, it is important to go with the person that really knows your brand or understands your brand and your industry. So in addition to the association industry, you might consider, who else in the industry you serve does websites or does this kind of work. So we ended up choosing Chapel Roberts. They had worked with us on a previous rebranding. They understood the credit union audience, they understood our web preferences, and they brought some really unique options to the RFP. But it's important to have that decision-making process sort of defined upfront to the team. Of course, it's just you picking, then, you might want to decide how you're going to decide. But in our case, we had a team of about 6 or 7 people. So you want, lay it out up front. Are you going to have a ranking system, voting? Is there an ultimate decision maker in case of a tie? So we did have 3 strong candidates and we had a team that was sort of divided on their preferences. So we made our decision ultimately by the leaders on the team deciding. But we made the right decision because Chapel Roberts delivered an amazing website to us. And Charlie is going to talk about some of that.
Thanks, Teresa. So one of the most important first steps when building any website is to conduct user research and testing. It's critical to understand the people who will be using your website, and it's equally critical for those same people to be able to understand the website that we're building. So this is one of my favorite philosophies when it comes to good user interface design, that a user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it to someone, it's not that good. And the best path towards a good user experience really is user research and user testing. So the first step in doing so is to develop user personas. We have to understand who's going to use the website. In the case of Q's, the users of this website will be credit union leaders, CEOs, directors, leaders, aspiring leaders, suppliers. And there are countless methodologies out there when it comes to defining user personas, but they all really center around these 3 key questions to ask yourself of what are the goals of your users? What are they coming to your site for? What are their motivations? What are fueling those goals? And what are their frustrations? What are the roadblocks that they might be meeting in achieving those goals? So when it comes to user research, I really love a platform called Optimal Workshop. It's really a fantastic suite of online tools. It's very easy to learn, it's very easy to use, and it costs about $200 a month for unlimited use, and you can kind of turn your subscription on and off as you need. You don't have to necessarily keep it all year. And within Optimal Workshop, a great tool to start with is called Optimal Sort. Optimal Sort essentially allows you to conduct what's called online card sorting exercises. So I guess to use an analogy to explain what that is, if you could imagine having a bunch of cards sitting on a table, and each one of those cards has a piece of your website content written on it. For a content hub like CU Management, that could be the headlines of a bunch of articles. And ideally, you would actually have the people who will be using your new website take those cards and sort them into logical categories, basically saying like these things make sense together. And optimal sort allows you to do all of that online. And the result of this exercise essentially gives you a really excellent starting point for how you organize and categorize your website content. This is what the results of optimal sort look like. They're displayed as what's called a similarity matrix, and it's admittedly a little overwhelming to look at when you first look at it. But once you kind of understand what it's displaying and understand how to read it, it's really helpful and easy to understand. The blue concentrations that you're seeing kind of along the edges of that stair step there, those basically represent consensus in content association. So that basically says that most people who did this exercise agreed that these things are associated. These pieces of content make sense together. And this really gives you a great starting point to begin establishing the architecture and the navigation labeling for your website. The next tool in optimal workshop that I'd like to share is called TreeJack. So TreeJack, after you've done your card sorting, TreeJack allows you to conduct what's called tree testing on your sitemap. For those not familiar, a sitemap it's essentially a diagram of all the pages on your website, your home page, your primary pages, your secondary pages, and beyond. And TreeJack actually allows you to load your sitemap into their platform, and then you would give a user of your website, again, ideally someone who would actually be using your website, you give them a task on your website, and you see if they're able to successfully complete that task and find that content in the sitemap that you've built. So here's an example. So this was one of the exercises that when we were doing the sitemap for CU Management and also for their association website, Qs.org. One of the tasks that we gave was if a user lost their printed magazine and wanted to find and read the full digital edition on the CU Management website. So we gave users that task, and then they were able to actually kind of click through the sitemap of where they thought that they would find that content. And in this test, 94% of the users successfully found that content in our sitemap. So that told us that we did a good job. We put that where it made sense, and we labeled it correctly. This was another example that we did. CU Management has a quarterly publication called Advancing Women. And in this task, we asked users to go find the edition of Advancing Women from the previous quarter. And in this test, only 50% of our users found this content in our sitemap. So that told us that we didn't do a very good job. We didn't make that content easy to find, and that we needed to iterate further and label some navigation differently. TreeJack even goes so far as to show where users did click. So this is the diagram that actually you can click on one of those exercises and see where each person who took the research clicked. So it's nice because it's like it shows you where, like, if users are consistently failing a task, TreeJack shows us, hey, everybody expected to find that here, but you had it placed over here. So it gives you really valuable insight into how that content could potentially be moved or labeled in a better way based on where people thought that they should find it. So ultimately, good user research will inform your navigation structure. It removes opinions and the subjectivity from your information architecture. And in the case of CU Management, our card sorting and tree testing exercises revealed that users wanted to sort by both content topics and by media type. So we actually built the CU Management website with this sort of dual navigation across the top where users can navigate by topics, say they want to read content about strategy, leadership, marketing, operations, or maybe they want to navigate by media type. Maybe they specifically want to read articles or listen to podcasts or watch videos or read white papers. And then the last tool that I'll share for user research, at the end of the day, there's no better way to get a feel for a website than to be able to actually look at the design and click and navigate and browse through it. When we were designing CU Management, we used a platform called Envision. And with Envision, you can actually take the static designs of your website and upload them into Envision and quickly make them interactive without writing a single line of code or involving a web developer. So it's a really easy way to quickly get a true feel for your website functionality. And there are a lot of other tools out there that allow you to do the exact same thing. Adobe has released something called Adobe XD now. There's some other similar tools like Figma and Framer. They all do more or less the same thing, and it kind of comes down to personal preference. But at the end of the day, this really it's so helpful to be able to actually see your design before you get into development and be able to kind of click around in it and just see how it actually feels. And if budget allows, you can even do another round of tree testing on something like this and actually have users kind of go in and test specific tasks within the designs. So the next consideration that we'll discuss is personalization. People don't want to be treated generically anymore. There's a desire for more personalization online, and it's becoming much easier to do that now. When we developed the CU management website and also the association website, Qs.org, we actually built them in parallel. Qs.org is much more focused on professional development and events for credit unions. But with both websites, we looked at personalization from day one. We used something called single sign-on, or SSO, on both websites. And this allowed our content personalization to actually cross between both websites instead of two totally independent experiences. So a couple places where we did that. When a user is not logged in, there's this section on the homepage of the CU management website called Popular Right Now. So this section always shows the most read content from the past week. It's connected into the analytics, and it just kind of automatically populates what was the most read content from the past week. But when a user is logged in, that section becomes recommended for you, kind of like when you go to Amazon. They know what you've purchased and what you've looked at, and they're always recommending things for you. We did a similar thing here. It actually says, welcome back, and it has your name there above recommended for you. And it displays the most popular content from the topics and media types that user would most frequently read. And when a user is logged in, we can also adjust the hierarchy of content on the website based on their viewing habits. So if they happen to read maybe more leadership and marketing content, they'll see that content first. And if for content maybe that they read less gets pushed a little bit further down the page. And last but not least, everyone's in a hurry these days. We built this site in such a way that all of the content previews, the thumbnails of the content before you actually click into a piece of content, actually tells a user how long it will take to read that content. So if it's a podcast or a video, it shows the duration of that content. If it's a text-based article, it will actually calculate the word count of that article, and it tells a user how long it might take to read that article. So this helps our user know what they're getting into before they click into a piece of content. If they don't have time for a long form article, they can clearly see some of our more bite-sized content. So our next consideration is to plan for engaging content. So generally when we talk about content, we think about our basic three things: our text content, our image content, our video content. And when we began working with Teresa and her team, they expressed a desire for more rich interactive content on CU management and the ability to easily plug in some of that rich content when needed. So we applied a modular, or often called componentized methodology to our site design. And this methodology is all about shifting from traditional rigid page templates to more flexible page building blocks, almost like stacking Legos one on top of another. So we built a toolbox of these modules or components that can be easily embedded into an otherwise basic looking page of text and image content, and have a few examples here we can show you. So the CU management quotes a lot of industry experts in their content, and it would be easy to just make that some bold italic text on the page. But we actually designed this testimonial or pull quote module that just feels more designed and more interesting and just kind of adds some visual interest to an otherwise text heavy page. And it has the options for the editors of the site to put in a headshot of the person being quoted, their name, their title, and even a Twitter button where they could click and tweet that quote if they wanted to. Another module in that toolbox is this image carousel, some common functionality that you'll see on websites a lot of times, but it gives editors of the CU management website the option to input any number of images and apply some captions to those, and just have this nice interactive element that can be easily added into a page. Everyone loves giving their opinion, so this module allows CU management editors to actually embed a survey question with any number of multiple choice answers, and users can actually click on those answers and see a breakdown of all the responses in real time. Another important type of content for CU management was data visualization. So rather than having to go get with their design team and go design every individual chart that they put on the site and drop it in as an image, we actually built a module that allows their editors to easily build and embed different types of charts in a piece of content. And each one allows for some light customization, varying size of data sets, bar charts, line charts, and pie charts. And we actually used Google Charts for this, which is a free API through Google. They have a huge gallery of free customizable lightweight charts that you can use. And it eliminates the need to go and build this functionality from scratch into your website and into your content management system. So when it comes to modular design, or this componentized approach to web design and getting away from page templates, there are really three key advantages. The first is that it allows site editors to just create more engaging content for users easily without having to custom build these things each time. The second is just looking at long-term viability of a website. A modular approach just makes for a very scalable website. It's much easier to add new functionality to a website without having to go tear apart a full page template just to add some new functionality to it. And then the third is just really looking at those individual modules. When you're looking at these modules more a la carte as these building blocks of your site, it's much easier to just restyle them or add new editing options to them or enhance their functionality in some way. Our sixth consideration is to cross-promote between your association website and your content hub. So if you have both an association website and a content hub, think about how you can promote your content hub on your association website, and vice versa. Think about how you can promote your association content on your content hub. In our case, we had Q's as our association website. Again, lots of professional development resources there and events, and CU management is our content hub. And while they exist as two different websites with two different purposes, we built them in parallel and really considered how they could both promote one another in some interesting ways, and have a couple of examples there as well. So Teresa mentioned earlier about ad space. So we sell ad space on our website. So we figured, why not use some of it for ourselves? So if a user is on the CU management website, perhaps reading some leadership content, maybe focused on CEOs, they're potentially seeing an ad for ExecuNet, the ExecuNet conference, which is a conference that's really focused on credit union leaders. And that ad would link over to the Qs.org website, where they could see the conference information and learn more about that event that's very relevant based on the content that they're reading. Another example, earlier we showed how you can navigate CU management content by both topics and media types. The events on Qs.org, again, the professional development and organization site, we intentionally categorized all of the events and the content on that site with the exact same topic labels. So that made it really easy for us to cross-promote relevant topics between both sites. So if a user is reading credit union marketing content on the CU management website, they're seeing professional development events focused on credit union marketing as well. So just by having that common nomenclature to our topics just made it very, very easy to cross-promote between the sites. And then alternately, over on Qs.org, the association website, if a user is, say, looking at a professional development event that is really focused maybe, let's say, on human resources, on HR, when they maybe get to the bottom of that page reading about that HR event, they're seeing HR content, HR topic content from CU management actually feeding into that page. So we're keeping our users engaged between both websites with content that's relevant to them and professional development opportunities that are also relevant to them. Our next consideration is to make sure that you understand website accessibility, or what's called WCAG compliance. This is something that you may or may not have been seeing in the news for the past 2 years or so, but if you're responsible for managing any kind of website, this is something that you should definitely be aware of at least. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are a series of recommendations from the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. And these recommendations are intended to improve website accessibility for individuals with disabilities. So that could be, visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and so forth. So for example, by following these guidelines on our website, you could potentially make your website more accessible for someone who may be using a screen reader, or a person who may be colorblind and can't see certain contrast between the text color and the background color. In 2017, the U.S. Access Board updated the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 to adopt 17 of the WCAG success criteria. And many organizations, especially those that receive federal funding, are now required to meet some level of compliance on their website. And since 2017, we've seen a big spike in lawsuits against companies with uncompliant websites. It's mostly been in Florida, New York, and California. But while these lawsuits have helped create a lot of awareness, I think, around website accessibility, a lot of companies were blindsided by these lawsuits, to be perfectly honest. And it unfortunately, as a result, I feel created a lot of negative conversation around this topic of website accessibility, which is a shame, because I think we can all agree website accessibility is a good thing. We want people to be able to use our website, regardless of who they are and if they have a disability. I feel this is something that we should all be doing our part to play our role in. Just like when mobile phones came, we all wanted to make our websites responsive and display better and read better on mobile devices. So let's look at some ways that we can make a website accessible. The official guidelines for all this can be found at w3.org. It's not exactly a page turner. It's a little overwhelming to read through these. It's a lot of kind of legal jargon, but just a quick Google search for just WCAG guidelines explained like a normal person will result in countless websites that do a really nice job of breaking down the guidelines and explaining what each one of them means in layman's terms, so you can understand how to apply it to your own website. So a few considerations here. First, it's really important to know what level of compliance, if any, you are legally obligated to meet now or may be required to meet in the future. I'm not an attorney, I don't claim to be, but at Chapel Roberts Word, when our clients don't know, we generally recommend that they all try to meet at least a AA level of compliance on their website, which is kind of middle of the road. There are different levels of compliance, all the way up to a AAA level of compliance, and it's mostly government organizations that are required to meet a AAA level of compliance, which is very difficult to achieve. The second consideration would be to make sure that you're partnering with designers and developers who know how to design and develop websites for this type of compliance. Going back to Teresa's point about an RFP, make this a part of your RFP, make this a question when you're interviewing a potential partner. It's not something that's going away, and there are still a lot of designers and developers, with this being kind of a newer thing, that have not had much experience with this. And the third consideration is to understand that it's easier to build a compliant website from the ground up than to go back and retroactively make a non-compliant website compliant. It's kind of like when you build a house. I live in Florida, and it's much easier to build a house that can withstand a hurricane and be up to code from the ground up than to go find like an old home that was built in the 1950s and renovate it to withstand a hurricane. It's not that it can't be done, but it's hard to do retroactively, and it can be costly depending on the size of the website. That being said, there are some new plugins out there. I know there's a WordPress plugin. There's one called Userway that actually allows you to add a button to the bottom corner of your website that can be used to help people better navigate your website. It gives them a lot of accessibility options. And while it doesn't do everything that you would want to make your website accessible, it does a lot. I would conservatively say it probably does 60 to 70% of what you need your website to be accessible. And then the next consideration here, the 8th one, is to design for a thoughtful ad experience. So currently, 30%, believe it or not, of all internet users are running ad blockers. So what ad blockers do is when you apply it to the browser on your phone or on your desktop computer, it essentially just blocks ads on any page that you go to and just fills them with empty white space. And this number continues to slowly tick up. We're up about 5% since 2018 of people using ad blockers. And as people continue to be turned off by intrusive ad experiences as they consume content online, that number just kind of keeps ticking up. And in fact, last year, Chrome and Firefox actually added native ad blocking to their browsers. So we're seeing more and more people starting to use ad blockers. I believe the percentage may be a little bit higher on mobile than it is on desktop. So for anybody using an ad blocker, you've probably seen something like this. Many publishers are combating ad block head on. This example here is from Business Insider, but they'll detect if you're using an ad blocker and essentially lock you out of their website until you either disable it or add their site to your approved list. And a lot of major news sources have begun doing this. You know, a lot of publications with really good content are starting to do this just because they're losing money by having ads blocked. So this has obviously created a dilemma for content creators. On one hand, you know, we need to sell ads to be able to pay our writers to write quality content. And then on the other hand, we need a good user experience, and there's really no quicker way to ruin an otherwise good user experience than with lots of annoying ads popping up all over the place. So this was a really important consideration when we built CU Management with Teresa and her team. We wanted to make sure that we were making a really good first impression and design for a respectful ad experience for our users. So a couple considerations here. The first one, just design for a lightweight, tasteful ad experience. In other words, don't annoy your users. The second consideration would be, especially if you're building a new website, to start out lightweight, grow your audience, carefully scale up that ad experience over time, but closely monitor and make sure that you're not losing readers as you do that. And then lastly would be to just leverage native advertising. That's, you know, ads that don't look like ads. Consider sponsored content, or with CU Management, we built a subscription model that offers premium content that's only accessible to users with a paid subscription.
Okay, so now it's back to me with our 9th consideration for having a clear plan for testing. So once the site is built, you need to make sure it works the way you want it to. So something that is helpful to do before you go live, and even after, I actually run our website through HubSpot's website grader quite frequently to see where we are. This is a free tool. If you just website.grader.com, or if you just Google HubSpot website grader, you'll find it. So it measures on performance, mobile, SEO, and security. So when we ran this, I think whenever that was, a couple years ago, we were at 87. So that's good. But again, as I said, I do sort of do this every so often and then look at, so here we're in performance, what's going on there and what we might do to make that score get higher. And then as you are testing, you want to make sure you have a good, strong quality assurance plan in place. Here, it's helpful to decide, who's going to be looking at what, have a checklist of items to watch for. It's helpful to have someone who's been through a website redesign or build before, because after you've done it a few times, there's sort of certain problems that come up over and over again, and you know to watch for them. It's also helpful to have someone test who has not been involved in the project in any way, because they bring a fresh set of eyes to it. And if, they might ask, is it supposed to be like this? And then if it is supposed to be like that, then, maybe you look at it and say, well, maybe we don't want it to be like this. Have a soft launch before your public launch. We launched cmanagement.com in mid-October 2018, but we pushed it live at the very beginning of the month, so that of course we've been testing it not live for a while. We wanted to test it in a live environment as well before we really pushed it out to our members and the public. And then when we did, we sent an email to our membership. We had ads in our print magazine in that issue. I mentioned it in the letter from the editor in the October issue. And we then announced it from the stage at our 3 major events that happened in November, December, and January. And those were a good way. We definitely I could see the bump in traffic, like 5 minutes after. So those announcements, so that was very helpful. And then our last consideration is to measure and adapt. So this is something I have to remind myself and my team almost every day. A website is never done. So when we went live in October 2018, we had a long list of items from our testing, so as we were going through the testing, we marked all of the sort of issues with high priority, medium priority, low priority. And a lot of the lows and even some of the mediums were sort of paused because we didn't have enough time to get to them all, or perhaps there were some budgetary concerns as well. So we are continuing going through those lists. And now a couple of years later, some of those items, we've learned to live with, or we realized it's not important. But we might have new lists, new wish list items coming up, or 2 years later, again, there's maybe something that's changed or something new we want to do. So we have an ongoing list where you're looking at it every month. We're sort of reprioritizing constantly. Our fiscal year starts at the end of this month. So October 1st starts a new fiscal year, and we'll have a new fiscal budget. And so we'll, again, look at what is our priority for spending in terms of just always enhancing and improving the website. And of course, you set your key performance indicators back at the beginning of the project. And so now you want to be continually measuring against those. In our case, unique users, page views, time spent on the website, pages per visit. But we're also looking at, another success factor is how many referrals are we sending over to our association site, Qt.org, because as Charlie said, the two sites are meant to sort of work together and be mutually sort of feeding each other. And then whatever your call to action might be, whatever your main goal, whether it's purchasing or new member signups, email signups, etc., whatever it is that it is, you really want the site to help you accomplish. You want to make sure you're measuring that. And these might change. So now we are looking a couple years in to how we can increase our email signups. So that's something we're, sort of exploring what we can do on the site to help us do that. And then setting, of course, our baselines and goals for getting there. So that is the 10 considerations for building a content site that people actually want to use. Here's our contact info, and please reach out to us with any questions. And of course, we'll have time for a few questions right now.
Great. Thank you both so much for that. We do have a couple questions already queued up. So first, when you had talked about defining the most popular articles or content to put forward, was that using a Google Analytics or a different tool set?
Yes, Google Analytics is how we're doing that. We get that report every, it's unfortunately it's not quite automated yet, but we update it every week based on the most popular from the past 7 days.
Great. Kind of a related question to that. You mentioned using Google Analytics. Do you use any other service to access success? What are the key metrics that you're looking at?
So we're really just using Google Analytics right now. Well, I mean, we look at the analytics from all of our, in every, sort of all of our different delivery channels. So our replica version through our printer, I look at the analytics there. We use Pardot for our emails, we look at the analytics there. But in terms of the website, it's all the analytics from Google and the Google Ad Manager, or whatever it's called now. And our key metrics are sort of, as I had listed, the users, the average monthly users is what, I want to see going up, average page views per month going up. And then I also look at the average page views per piece of content. So I really would like that to go up. And that helps me decide, sort of determine whether we need to, I don't think we really need to increase content, but sometimes I think we could do less and get that average page view per content to be just as high or even higher.
Great. Well, so speaking of that, I was kind of wondering myself about, you mentioned the cross promotion between the websites, and I just wondered if you had been paying attention to that at all, and if you could talk about what kind of effects you've seen there.
Sure. So Qs.org, so cmanagement.com launched in October 2018, and the original plan was to launch the new Qs.org at the same time. And what I didn't mention is that we RFP'd this project in this January of 2018. So we selected Chapel Roberts in April and sort of saw the first design in June. So we really didn't have time to build 2 websites from June to October. So Qs.org got pushed off by a year. So we launched Qs.org, the new design Qs.org, in 2019. Also, just the 11th point should be, don't ever try and do a website that fast if you want to stay relatively calm. But so Qs.org is still relatively, well, I guess it's coming up on a year now. It is almost October. This year is weird. So yes, we have, I measure sort of what Qs.org is definitely one of our top sort of traffic sources on cumanagement.com. And so that's important. And, we sort of hope to see that continue to grow even more as we find ways to sort of increase the views of our content over on that site.
Great. So we are getting kind of close to the end here. Now, there's 2 questions Charlie can knock out fairly quickly for us. One is, what is the CMS that you're using that module system in?
Right. The Qs site and CU management are built on Drupal. But I do want to clarify, it's more of a methodology than a functionality. Most modern content management systems allow for a modular approach. We actually just on Friday launched a website in WordPress that was built completely with modules, and have another one in the works as well. So, beyond Drupal and WordPress, it really is, similar to some of the other points about making sure that you're partnering with a developer that, understands how to work within that type of methodology and has built sites like that before.
Great, thank you. And then we have somebody who says they are revamping their current hub, but don't have the budget to use tools like TreeJack or Optimum Workshop. What are some ways that you would suggest to conduct user research without outsourcing?
Sure. There are a lot of kind of analog ways that you can do that. I mean, I think there may be a cheaper subscription that you can use on Optimal Sort that's more of kind of like for personal use, and you can use it internally. But something that we've done in the past is do what we call paper testing. I mean, I mentioned the card sorting thing, which is basically taking like cards that you would put on a table and doing it online. You can do it in person. We will sometimes with clients like kind of just get them in a room with us in front of a cork board and pin a bunch of things on Post-its on a wall and kind of shift things around and have different people come into the room and kind of try to organize things into logical groupings. Same with TreeJack, when you're testing tasks like that, it's always ideal to use the people who will actually be using your website. But I mean, I've even like gone to my wife before and said like, hey, how would you get from, if I give you this task on this website, what would you click on to find that? And just asking people who are kind of maybe outside of, your level of understanding of your own content and have them try to accomplish those tasks.
Great, thank you. So is the content on CU management available to members and non-members as alike?
There's a mix. So some content is for members only, and some content is for members only who have a specific membership. So we have sort of different levels of membership. Our highest level of membership gets extra content, and then some of it is open to the public, and which, sort of using that to try and pull in those younger credit union members or the people who are not yet members to sort of get to know us and then want to join.
Great, thank you. Well, so we are just at about time, and I know that some folks have a heart out today, or they might have children or spouses or something else going on that might require some attention in the background right now. So we will stick around for a few more minutes if there are some questions, but if you'd like to go, this is a great time to drop out. Wanted to take the opportunity to thank you again for joining us today, and hoping that you took some of this great information away and are able to maybe put some of it to use right away. In a similar vein, there is still time to register for this week's AM&P Virtual Roundtable. We're going to be talking about building diverse and inclusive teams. So if you're not familiar with that particular series, it's a very casual conversation where we're talking about, in very honest sorts of ways, about some of the challenges that we're seeing and overcoming in the industry. So we'd love to have you. That's 1 p.m. Eastern on Friday. You can register at AM&P website. So thank you everybody again for joining. Stay safe, stay well. And Teresa, do you have time for a couple more questions if we have them?
I do, sure, yes.
Great. Okay, we do have. All right. So I actually had a question about the module design in there, and because obviously a big push for that is making it easier for the editors to update without having to like rebuild pages. How has that gone with, particularly maybe with people who aren't as fluent in design sort of things, or are more Word people?
Sure. Excuse me. So how it sort of like works technically in the CMS is we have, so you sort of pick okay, this is just a content block, just words, and you can also put pictures in there. But then if you want to add, you can say, okay, here's, you add the words, and then you want to add a pull quote. So then you just sort of have a little button, add pull quote, and put all the info in. And then another button if you want to add, like the carousel or whatever. So when you're sort of looking for, as an editor, when I'm looking at the content, sort of in a Word document, I start to sort of try and picture it or sort of mark it up in there, and how I might want to break it up on the website, or even as I'm creating it, like, okay, well, this part, is of course just going to be like a plain Word block, but then I might want to do this portion of it in a carousel, or we even have some other modules Charlie didn't go through. One of them is sort of like an expanding it's like gives a little snippet, and you can hit the X or the plus and expand it to see deeper. So you start to sort of see how the words might work in sort of more visual ways.
Great. All right. Well, it looks like you've done such a fantastic job presenting that we don't have any more questions today.
Right.
So thank you again for joining and for sharing all this with us, Teresa.
Absolutely. And as I said, if anyone wants to reach out later, please do. Happy to get back to you. And a plug for the Friday sessions. They're awesome. I haven't been able to come for a while because I've been taking Fridays off, but once things calm down, I love them so much.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Take care.
Right. Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.